How's it going, everyone? Welcome into the final edition of Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Isaiah Adair. Today, it's with heavy hearts that we say goodbye to the station. First, as always, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, you want to support the station, then be sure to follow their social media pages. Their Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram and Facebook are Radio Free Radford. That's at Radio Free Raddy, and Instagram and Facebook, Radio Free Radford. I know that I speak for Isaiah and myself when I say that the time we have spent here on the station talking about the sports world is time that we will always cherish and hold dear to our hearts. When I created this show and I asked Isaiah to come on, I really wanted it to have a very relatable atmosphere, in that what you see in the show is exactly how we are outside of the show. We're always discussing professional college sports, and I love being able to share our opinions with you, the listeners. Now, before you think we're done, we're actually going to talk about sports today. It's not just going to be a sentimental show. So we'll go ahead and get started. Isaiah, you ready to be like Dwayne Wade for one last dance?
Yes, I'm ready, sadly, but I'm ready.
So with that being said, stick around with us. Today we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs, and our final hot takes of the weeks. For those of you that are baseball enthusiasts, it's not much change here in the MLB. A couple of, again, surprising teams, but we've covered that already. There wasn't many changes in the MLB world, so we decided with the NFL draft and the NBA playoffs, we need to talk about those more. So talking about the NFL draft, of course, the 2019 NFL draft was a success in theory for some teams, but I'll be honest, a lot of times we were left kind of confused by other teams' moves. The first things first, I'm going to read off what each first round pick was. So as far as that goes, with the first overall pick, the Cardinals selected Kyler Murray, then Nick Bosa to the San Francisco 49ers, Quinnen Williams to the New York Jets, Cleveland Farrell to the Oakland Raiders, Devin White to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Daniel Jones to the New York Giants, Josh Allen to the Jaguars, TJ Hawkinson to the Lions, Ed Oliver to the Bills, Devin Bush to the Steelers, Jonah Williams to the Bengals, Rashawn Gary to the Packers, Christian Wilkins to the Dolphins, Chris Lindstrom to the Falcons, Dwayne Haskins to the Redskins, Brian Burns to the Panthers, Dexter Lawrence to the Giants, Garrett Bradbury to the Vikings, Jeffrey Simmons to the Tennessee Titans, Noah Fant to the Denver Broncos, Darnell Savage Jr. to the Green Bay Packers, Andre Dillard to the Eagles, Titus Howard to the Texans, Josh Jacobs to the Raiders, Marquise Brown to the Ravens, Montez Sweat to the Redskins, Jonathan Abram to the Raiders, Jerry Tillery to the Chargers, LJ Collier to the Seahawks, DeAndre Baker to the Giants, Caleb McGarry to the Falcons, and N'Keal Harry to the Patriots. Big mouthful there. But, so Isaiah, I wanted to start off the show by asking, who had the most successful draft? Who do you think that made the proper moves to not only improve in the upcoming season, but essentially show that they have a chance at playoffs or increase their chance at playoffs? Who do you think did that with their draft, not just in the first round, but in totality?
First, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I can, but I'm going to start off with the Washington Redskins. I really like the combination of Dwayne Haskins fell to number 15. I mean, I thought he would fall. I didn't think he'd fall that far, personally. And then moving up to get Montez Sweat, one of the better edge rushers in the draft. Pairing him with that defense, and I'm pretty sure they still have Ryan Kerrigan. They have Reuben Foster, who's probably not going to face any suspension. They're forming a very good defense. And Dwayne Haskins take over the quarterback room the next 3 or 4 years. Is going to be a cheap quarterback that can really play well in that style offense, especially the run-heavy offense that they're trying to put together here. I really like what the Washington Redskins have done, and they're probably my favorite draft class. But as a Cardinal fan, I've got to say that I think Arizona had one of the better classes. I initially didn't like the Kyler Murray pick because we had Josh Rosen, but after we picked Murray, we got Byron Murphy in the second round. He can start at corner if Peterson stays or leaves. He can start the opposite side. I like the pickup of Andy Isabella. It really surprised me, that pick did, but I like it, especially being able to get Hakeem Butler later and Keyshawn Johnson later. We got 2 offensive linemen. I wasn't a fan of waiting to get them, but again, we got some really, really effective players all over the place, specifically offense, but even Deontay Thompson late. So I really like what the Cardinals did as well, and I think probably will miss playoffs still, but could improve greatly next year.
I do like that you mentioned the Deontay Thompson pick. I think it was a great pick for the third round. Also, I like that you mentioned the Redskins because that was the team I was pointing at as well. Let me read to you what I think is going to be a move that isn't necessarily being looked at as much. Their running back room was Darius Geis, Chris Thompson, Samaje Perine, Adrian Peterson. Now you add Bryce Love, a guy who did literally everything for Stanford. That is the exact player, especially since they also got Dwayne Haskins, that offense needed. Who was the guy that was the identity for that Redskins offense? There really wasn't one. Now Bryce Love, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist, who again was a do-it-all kind of guy for Stanford. You add him as a third or fourth round pick, like that is a phenomenal draft in favor of the Redskins. I also will say that I really am confused. I think that the Giants salvaged their draft. I'm confused with the first pick, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I think the Giants still had a pretty solid draft aside from that. And Jacksonville, I had no vision of them picking a defensive player. But when you have a guy like Josh Allen fall to you number 7, you absolutely take him. Fun fact, for the second straight year, the 7th pick in the NFL draft is Josh Allen. So, because Josh Allen from the Bills was selected at the 7th pick last year. So, those are my pick. The best draft by far to me was Washington. That was the team that really stood themselves out. Now, we're going to flip it around and say, who had the worst draft, in your opinion? Who do you think didn't really improve themselves and wasn't, or not necessarily didn't improve themselves, or didn't make anything to separate themselves from the pack?
This is a hard choice. I'm gonna split here again, picking two teams. One, I'm gonna go with the Giants. Yeah, they did have a decent draft, but using the 6th overall pick, you got so many holes in your team. Hole at receiver now, a hole at quarterback, and then a hole on most of the defensive spots. Using the 6th overall pick with guys like Ed Oliver still on the board, it doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, so I would say that just because I think, again, I feel like Daniel Jones would have been there later, and like you said, we'll probably be talking about that later. But I will say this one guy made a good point, Bill Barnwell. He said the Giants traded Damon Harrison and Eli Apple and let Landon Collins leave, and then traded Odell. And when they traded Odell, they were able to get replacements for Damon Harrison, Landon Collins, and Eli Apple with those picks. So I understand where they're coming from, but Landon Collins was the all-pro guy. Eli Apple showing that he could be a future Pro Bowl guy in New Orleans. Damon Harrison was solid, not a Pro Bowler anymore. So I'll give him that. But on the other side, I've got to say maybe the New York Giants, or not New York Giants, I just said them, the San Francisco 49ers. They had a decent draft. Again, like they had a really solid draft. They got Nick Bosa. But aside from Bosa, like there wasn't any they didn't make any splashy moves, I don't think, really. It was a pretty decent, solid draft. But I think they got Deebo Samuel that could be effective for the offense. But to me, it just didn't seem as good as it could have been.
They also did draft Jalen Hurd. I will say that, a receiver from Baylor. But even then, that's a guy who spent a majority of his college career as a running back at Tennessee, sat out a year, and transferred as a receiver. So there's some raw ability there. There's a chance for it, but that's not a guarantee, especially with they use like a 4th round pick on him. My team that had the worst draft, I thought about saying Cleveland because Cleveland didn't do much in the actual draft, but then again, with the moves they made this offseason, one, they didn't need to, and two, they couldn't. Their 1st round pick was traded in the Odell Beckham trade, so they really didn't have much room for improvement. But who did and didn't do much with it? Detroit. Detroit's draft was not great. You have a team that needed pass rushers. You've got to get to the quarterback. What was the main reason they lost games last year? Because their defense was not good. And you take a tight end in the 1st round after you signed Jesse James this offseason? I don't get it. I don't understand why the Lions made the trade. I think T.J. Hawkinson is a solid tight end. I think that he could be a good tight end, but that just wasn't what they needed. They did not need a player in the receiving game. You had to get a pass rusher, and there were so many readily available in the 1st round. I just feel like that's a reach. I don't think I agree with the tight end pick in the 1st round, and really, other than that, they didn't help themselves a ton. I mean, they actually picked 2 tight ends this draft. One from Georgia, Nada, I think is how you say it. But again, I just don't. Not even that the Lions really hurt themselves. I just don't think they did anything at all that was notable, other than making a head scratching decision to pick a tight end in the 1st round. Again, I think that Hawkinson The last time I drafted a tight end early was Eric Ebron, and you see what Ebron's doing in Indianapolis now. But T.J. Hawkinson, that just doesn't make sense to me. You signed Jesse James for a reason. Why are you trying to improve a position that you already have a player in when you have so many other holes in the team? There's a reason that team finished as bad as they did last year in the NFC North. So I don't quite understand that. Again, I do agree with you in that I think New York had a solid draft. I do. But that first pick is almost... And the same thing can be said for Oakland. Like the Oakland pick, you have so many expectations. I really like the Josh Jacobs pick for them at the 24th pick. I can't forgive Cleveland Farrell going 4 because this is a guy at our mock drafts we had going at like 19, 16. They did not have to wait, or they did not have to take him at number 4 overall. There were so many. You could have taken Josh Allen. You could have taken, just naming a few, Brian Burns over him, Ed Oliver. And we still saw them, maybe they really liked him, but still, that's a big reach to me. So, speaking of that, which one is a bigger reach to you? Daniel Jones to the Giants, or Farrell to the Raiders? And the reason we ask that is because, of course, the sports world and Twitter blew up when both of them happened. And these are teams that clearly had rough seasons last year, clearly needed to make a splash in the draft to get back to relevancy. And they didn't do either. So, in your mind, which is a bigger reach, Jones or what the Raiders did?
I'm going to say Jones for multiple reasons. First of all, we're talking about a rookie contract, especially like that part of the first round, 4 years with a 5th-year option. They said they might sit him for 3, which means 1 year is all they're guaranteed to get. And if he plays well or doesn't play well in that first year, if they do sit him for those 3 years, then they can pick him up for 1 more year, and then he could just raise his value and leave if New York continues to be a dumpster fire. Really, with their plans, it's really a bad choice to go quarterback at number 6. They reference Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was a late first-round pick. And another reason I'm going Daniel Jones here is he would have been here in the late first round, early second round. But I also like something I read on, I think it was Twitter earlier, talking about Mike Mayock, who's the Raiders GM. He is known for being a draft expert. And that's pretty much all he's known for. But is just analyzing the draft and having fairly accurate mock drafts and good positional grades usually. What I saw that I liked today, it was kind of put into perspective for me because I didn't like the Farrell pick at all. I'm still questioning it. But they said if Mike Mayock was not their GM and was being open about his draft analyses during this time, Farrell probably would have been there anyway because obviously he was a big fan. And he is a big influencer in the draft world. So he would have been talking up Cleveland Farrell just as much as Josh Allen and Brian Burns would have been talked up. But he was keeping it secret and ended up benefiting them. Still, again, they could have traded down. He kept it such a good secret how much he liked the player. He could have traded down and probably still got him, like you were just referencing. Could have still got him midway through the first round. But I think it looks at where the value. My biggest concern with that is they just like Clemson guys, it looks like, and I don't think that's going to be very beneficial. But overall, Daniel Jones, I think they got less value, higher pick, and only 2 picks behind. They got substantially less value. They could have done so much more with the pick, especially with their positional needs. And if you're going to play Eli for 3 more years, next year's class, like we've mentioned multiple times, next year's quarterback class is really good.
Do want to mention, just as a fun fact about Farrell, I believe it's like the first time in NFL history that 3 players from the same college and the same defensive line was drafted in the first round. Absolutely ridiculous and greatness from Clemson this past year. But I also like what you said about Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers was seen with Alex Smith as the next best quarterback in that class. That was not a secret. And if a team had drafted him in the first 10 picks, 6 picks, it would have been assumed that he was going to play as soon as he got on the field, as soon as he got with the team. Here's why it's a difference, though. The Packers took a flyer on him, I think it was the 21st pick of that draft.
It was the 20s, yeah.
So at that point, you can afford to do that. And you have, at that time, probably the greatest quarterback, at least in a conversation, the greatest quarterback in the history of football. One of them. It made sense to do that. For the Giants, you have your own fan base turning against you with Eli Manning right now. Eli is obviously, although he's still a decent quarterback, not what he used to be. He's not 2-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning anymore. He is a guy who, again, he's not bad, but he's not great. He's not what he used to be. My thought process is if you're going to take a quarterback there, I understand why they did it, because if you're going to take a quarterback there, I don't take a quarterback there. I'll go ahead and be straight up. You have other picks in the draft. You can pick a guy that you think you could develop. But a guy like Daniel Jones, he's raw. He has plenty of he has plenty of pro-ready traits, and I've mentioned this before, but his receivers, he led the NCAA, led the country in dropped passes last year. His receivers just could not haul it in. And his highlight tape, he does show a lot of great passing ability and a lot of great throws. But looking in the grand scheme of things, like I said, to pick him at 6, you don't take players that you think you might be able to develop at 6th overall. You take that mid-first round, 2nd round. This reminds me a lot, if you go back to the NBA draft in 2016, I believe, in which the Kings, I believe it was the Kings, then traded him to the Suns, selected Marquise Chris. Marquise Chris was a player that played college basketball, had barely played, I think he literally had about 4 years of basketball experience before going on this pick. Marquise Chris, all he had about him was athletic ability. You don't draft him at number 6 in the NBA draft, number 4 in the NBA draft, whatever it was. And that's exactly what I compare this to. Daniel Jones is a guy who, with the right coaching and with the right development, he could be a fantastic quarterback. He's got the tools, he's got the potential. But it's just too high to draft him at number 6. I like what you said about Farrell, too. Farrell is one where... And here's the thing about defensive players. Defensive players can be so hard to judge when exactly they're going to go and when they should go. Because as long as you can, unless your name is like J.J. Watt, Von Miller, Khalil Mack, your names aren't said as often in an impact play. So for Farrell to come out, if he has a decent season, that's still seen as a success because a defensive player in their rookie season isn't expected to go and make a name. But a quarterback absolutely is. If you draft a quarterback that high, it is expected they're going to play, and they're going to play well, or they're considered a bust. And I feel like the Giants just took a wrong approach with that. But anyways, the NFL draft officially done, was conducted this past weekend, like I said. And so now we're in the final countdown for the regular season. It will begin, or the preseason will begin in August, as always. But we're starting to finally come to a conclusion of how teams will look for the upcoming season. Now we go to NBA basketball. Still got a lot to cover for the NBA. It's been a successful postseason so far. We'll do the postseason review. In the first round, the Warriors did beat the Los Angeles Clippers in 6 games after the Clippers fought hard and won actually 2 games in Oracle. So Golden State advances, and waiting for them was the Houston Rockets. And in the first game of that series, the Warriors and the Warriors get the win 104-100 in Oracle. James Harden and the rest of the Rockets having some complaints, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Talking about the 2 seed, the Denver Nuggets, they beat the San Antonio Spurs in the only game to go past the only series to go past 6 games. They get a gritty Game 7 win against the San Antonio Spurs. And then, with only 1 day of rest, remember, the Portland Trail Blazers had beaten the Oklahoma City Thunder in 5 games. With barely any rest but the home court, Denver comes out and beats Portland 121-113. Nikola Jokic, fantastic as ever. With the 4 seed, as I said, the Thunder, the Spurs, the Clippers, and the Jazz have been eliminated from playoff contention in the Western Conference. Now, in the Eastern Conference, we have Milwaukee and Boston. I don't know if anybody expected this. Boston comes out and dominates game 1 in Milwaukee. They win 112-90, a 30-point win after the Celtics swept the Pacers and the Bucks swept the Pistons. So, Al Horford locking up Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it was insane. They will play Game 2 tonight on TNT. And the last series in the Eastern Conference, we have Toronto and Philadelphia. Toronto really played well. Kawhi dropped 45 in the first game. 108-95 was in favor of Toronto. But the Sixers get their revenge off of a great game from Jimmy Butler last night as they win 94-89. We're talking about this Raptors team. I believe it is the only series so far to have played more than 1 game. So that is, again, this Sixers team got a gritty win on the road, and now they hold the advantage. But I don't think this Raptors team is going to lose every game in Philadelphia. I think this is going to be a tough fight. This is a series that might go 7. I'm always one that I say, too, that I think the Sixers are a little overrated. I do, because I don't like their bench depth at all. But when you have a starting five like they have, it is very clear that they're going to be able to compete in certain series. So, I'm going to go ahead and ask this. I think I know your answer, because I know what mine is. What is your series to watch? If you're going to circle a series, which one are you saying tune in each night because you're going to watch fireworks? I already know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to you.
See, for me, I'm going to surprise you because I know what you're thinking too. So I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to say my series to watch is going to be between, because I'm just going to ignore the obvious one. My series to watch is between Portland and Denver and Milwaukee and Boston. And that's my pick for the East, my pick for the West. Just because I really like you just mentioned, Boston won by 30 against the Bucks in their game one. Giannis isn't going to settle for that. I personally think Giannis is the best player in the Eastern Conference. And it's just between him and Kawhi personally. But I think Giannis is the best player in the Eastern Conference, and he's not going to go down. He's going to game back, and he's going to have the games of his life for the rest of the series. And then again with Portland and Denver, you have the most underrated point guard in the NBA in Damian Lillard. You have, I still think Nikola Jokic is still an underrated big man because Denver's small market. He's not getting a lot of publicity. So you have some of the most underrated players at the positions playing in a big game in the Western Conference semifinals. And yeah, Denver just won by 8. I think this is another series that could go 8 games just because both teams, or 7 games. I don't know why I said 8. 7 games because Damian Lillard's hungry. Damian Lillard wants his recognition. And Denver's got such a young core, and so much energy, so much talent. I think the talent is understated, how much talent they actually have. So those are my 2 series to watch.
Just want to point out, in that game 1 between the Blazers and the Nuggets, Damian Lillard with 39 points and a loss. Jokic with 37, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. It's insane because that's a normal stat line for him, and he's a center, guys. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But I'll get away from my favorite team for now. I like that you went the other way. It's clearly the Warriors and the Rockets. Everyone's looking for that series. Of course, this is a rematch from last year. The Rockets actually audited Game 7, saying that they were robbed of a chance to the NBA Finals. No, you weren't. You missed 27 straight threes, guys. You're not going to make... You don't deserve... And I'm sorry. I understand if there's some questionable calls. Don't miss 27 threes as an NBA franchise on the biggest stage, and you can get into the NBA Finals. The officials cannot help you with your three-point shooting. The Warriors and the Rockets, of course, with James Harden's comments. Again, talk about that in a second. I also agree with you in that I like this Bucks and Celtics series because the Celtics, as we know, top to bottom, if they're playing and firing on all cylinders, they might be the best team in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. But the Bucks probably have the best player in the Eastern Conference. It's a competition between him and Kawhi Leonard. But if Al Horford can play defense like he did in Game 1 all series long, this could be an interesting time because we haven't seen Milwaukee anybody have to step up. Malcolm Brogdon's hurt right now, but Chris Middleton hasn't had to step up at times this year. Like he did in the last postseason, the Celtics actually knocked them out last year too, but Middleton hit a deep 3 to win a game. So Middleton will have to step up. Bledsoe will have to step up. Brooke Lopez will have to step up. There's going to be a lot of players for this Bucks team that's going to be challenged and say, well, if Giannis is getting contained, not even stopped, if he's getting contained a little bit, you're going to have to step up and start making shots. And that's why I think a team like Portland is in trouble. Because Portland, I agree with you. I think that Damian Lillard is, in my opinion, he's the second best point guard in the league. A lot of times people do underrate him. They put Russell Westbrook over him. I've seen people even put like Kemba Walker over him, which I think, as much as I love Kemba Walker, is ludicrous. I think that Damian Lillard is the true number 2 point guard in the West, or point guard in the league, only trailing Stephen Curry. But the Blazers right now, they are definitely missing Yusuf Nurkic down low. I'm not saying that Nurkic would have been able to completely just negate everything Jokic has done, but what he brings on both an offensive and a defensive standpoint, and as Cantor, as well as he's injured, just cannot keep up with that. And so I think that the Blazers don't really have an answer for Jokic in this series. I think this is a series that goes maybe 6 games. And I think that this is the fan of me saying it, but I think that Denver controls the home court. And I think that if it comes down to it, and even if Portland wins both home games, I think Denver could do it in 6 games. But again, a lot of basketball left to be played. And now we'll talk about the other big story of the postseason so far, James Harden. We talked about in game 1, there was a borderline call, or I should say a no call at the end of the game where James Harden was trying for a 3. Draymond kind of got a little close, and Harden falls to the ground looking for a foul. They don't call anything, and now he is going on a tear. All that the Rockets are saying how they aren't being represented. They need to have more foul calls and things like that. I've got a little bit of a rant for this one, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go first. What are your thoughts on that, and do you think that the Rockets actually have a case?
There's a reason that I did not pick this for my series to watch. It's because I cannot stand the Houston Rockets. I respect the talent that they have, but goodness, do they get on my nerves. James Harden gets on my nerves, and it's not just him anymore. It's the whole organization. You can't tell me you're setting these records for most free throws shot in a game, and then you're complaining about not getting any calls. Like, I don't understand it. I know that they audited they got the full report, and they released part of it from the last game, from game 1. And there was an instance with Draymond Green. There was the one with Clay. They said Steph should have fouled out. And the refs did say Steph should have fouled out. But then they went back and said, but the 5th foul that he had should not have been a foul, so he wouldn't have fouled out. And they said the very last play by Clay, the quote-unquote foul by Clay, was not a foul either. So I think it's unnecessary, and I think people forget that James Harden throws himself at defenders. And not only does he do that, let's make the comparison. If James Harden made those shots even when they were contested all the time, he wouldn't get the calls. Let's look at Steph Curry. He makes the shots where he's fouled. He makes the shots when he's contested. He doesn't get as many calls. If he was a better shooter, then he wouldn't have to worry about getting the foul calls, and then it wouldn't be a question. I mean, you don't see Golden State. Yes, Golden State does complain about it sometimes, but are they publicly saying, "Oh, we deserve to win this game. We're going to audit this. We're going to foul on the pill at the NBA"? It goes way too far.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. First off, James Harden is the last person ever to complain about foul calls. I watched on so many occasions this year. He does that stupid step back, which by the technical rules is not a travel, but it's still frustrating to watch because all he does, if you ever watch him on 3-point shots, he doesn't try to land on his feet. He tries his hardest to get contact and just fall to the ground. It's the most frustrating thing ever. James Harden, you got away with a 4-step back earlier this year against the Utah Jazz. Nothing at all came from that. In the one sense, you're starting from 4 steps behind the 3-point line. When you shoot, you land on the line. What is a defensive player supposed to do there? Nothing. That's what they're supposed to do because there's nothing they can do. In that situation, it is clear. You are not trying to make a shot at that point. You are looking to get contact. You are trying to draw a foul call. And it's ridiculous to me that the NBA has allowed it to that much. It's an overreaction to what happened to Kawhi Leonard. But in Kawhi's case, Kawhi's in the corner. He goes straight up. Zaza maybe gets a little too close. He comes straight down. Understandable. Call the foul at that point. But when James Harden, like you said, is launching into defenders over and over from the 3-point line, they should not get foul calls from that. In case of the San Antonio Spurs did that perfectly in their first series. They did lose that series in 7, but there was a lot of instances to where they went straight up and they knew once the contact was made, then they went to the ground. You'll get a foul call doing that. It's not that big a deal. It's when you're jumping into them. You are launching yourself into people trying to get... What is Draymond Green supposed to do? What is Klay Thompson supposed to do? Because they can't do anything. James Harden is already one of the most unguardable players in the NBA because of his skill set. The officials don't need to make him even more unguardable because if you so much as breathe on him, it's going to be a foul. And I'm so frustrated with the flopping because if you watch the 3 I'm talking about with Draymond, again, James Harden, if he had tried to land on his feet and then fell, it might have gotten a case. But he's flailing in the air and going straight to his back to make sure it looks like he actually got hit, when in reality he didn't. So I'm sorry, I cannot support the Rockets right now when, again, It's frustrating. You have to bring up Game 7 of last year's Western Conference Finals. Again, I am always one that I say, although it can have a major factor in the way it ends, officials do not give a game away. There's always something you could have done within the game. Obviously, it's expected that you shouldn't have to be perfect to win a game. And sometimes with a certain call, it's very possible that, again, it's... but my thing is, it's never only an official's fault that a team loses a game. Houston, I don't care what call you think you got, or that you think you didn't get, or what calls that Golden State did get. First off, Golden State shot 6 more free throws last night. 6. Ridiculous. Or excuse me, Monday night. But you're talking about this. It's a non-story. Game 7, you missed 27 threes. I'm not going to let that go. It's an NBA record for the most consecutive threes missed in the game. You did it on the biggest stage. You had Chris Paul back. You were supposed to be the team. You pushed this team to 7 games. You didn't have Chris Paul for most of the series. Now you have him back, and you look worse of a team. Don't blame officials for your own struggles in your shooting game. And that's my entire point on it. I don't think that... I think it's funny, too, that Scott Foster has been announced as the official for tonight's matchup between them, which I think is perfect because Scott Foster just hates James Harden. And I think I'm probably going to watch that game just to watch and see them fight. But, again... Houston having some complaints, but it doesn't matter. Golden State wins the first game, 104-100. Now, go ahead.
I would like to add too, like if you watch the plays, I saw like the Klay Thompson one in particular. When he did jump, there was like I think the Sports Center like marked the line of where his foot was when he jumped, and it was like 2 or 3 feet forward. And I know they're saying, oh, the closeout, they need to like just adjust their closeout. But that argument that the defensive players should have to adjust their closeout, so they're pretty much saying so they should be 1 or 2 feet away from you when you land from your shot. How does that? That's either saying that's like saying give me an open shot or give me a foul, and that's not basketball. That's not competitive sports. That's a 3-point contest. So that's one of my big like problems with it as well.
You're right, and you can't give that separation to anybody. Let alone a guy like James Harden, who is the reigning MVP, who has a good chance to go back-to-back this year. And again, with the offensive skill set that James Harden has, to completely take away any edge the team has, because he knows. Throughout the regular season, he got that call on Draymond Green. He got that call against Klay Thompson. But as everyone says, and I loved it, a lot of teams were hammering some younger, inexperienced teams. The Nuggets, the Jazz. The Jazz only had the 1-year playoff experience under their belt. The Magic, and they were saying they won't succeed in the playoffs because defenses get tighter, officiating gets tighter. But apparently no one said that to the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets have been here before, and they should know. The officials are going to call a game much, much better in the postseason than they are in the regular season. Because here's the thing. In the regular season, who really cares at the end of the day if a team loses off of that? Granted, it could have implications in the seeding, but it doesn't matter until the postseason that we see somebody like actually fully complaining. Houston's been here before. They should know that the officials are going to watch that closer. In the regular season, if they see a jump shooter fall down, they're probably going to assume it's a foul. In the postseason, you've got to keep an eye out, and I think that they did that, and they called the right call by going a no call in Game 1, excuse me. Now let's talk about our favorites from each conference. So in your mind, from the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, who have you seen so far from the playoffs so far, and really what they have that you think will be the favorite to get out of their conference into the NBA Finals? I know mine right now, and it may shock you, but let's go ahead and talk about your favorites out of each conference.
In the West, I've got to go Golden State, of course. Not much explanation needed there. In the East, I want to say mine is Toronto right now. As much as I like Milwaukee, I like what Kawhi's doing. Kyle Lowry has not played great. If he can get things going though, it'll be like with how Pascal Siakam how he's playing, and then they have Gasol on Toronto as well. Like they have, I think they have probably the most well-rounded, talented roster in the Eastern Conference, other than Boston. But they put it together better than Boston. Like Kawhi, like we said, arguably the best player in the Eastern Conference. I would say the second best player in the Eastern Conference. and they're a team that can even excel on the defensive end. So they got to be my Eastern Conference pick there.
Apparently, I'm not surprising you because it's exactly what I was going to say. Golden State should be seen as the favorite by far. There's really bar none. There's still a chance they could get DeMarcus Cousins back, but odds are against it for the NBA Finals if they make it. When you're talking about in the East, we saw what happened whenever a center can play competent defense on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Al Horford locked him up, blocked him like 4 or 5 times that game. It was ridiculous, the defense he was playing. So if Boston gets out of that first round, now you're talking about, you have a center guarding Giannis who plays the power forward. Who's guarding Kawhi Leonard? And if you lock up Kawhi Leonard, who's guarding Pascal? Who's guarding Kyle Lowry if he can find a shot? That's my thought process. Kyrie Irving is not a good defensive player. That's not a secret by any means. So if Lowry can find his shot, that's a great matchup on the offense-defense scale. Now, let's say the Bucks come out and they find a way to get past the Celtics. Now you have Marc Gasol, who is renowned as a great defensive center. We saw him even in the first round with Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic, the highest scoring game he had all series was like 17 points. So Marc Gasol, with the defense he plays, I think this is a bad matchup for both I think the Celtics and both the Celtics and the Raptors are bad matchups for the Bucks because I think that with the defensive edge they have, it's going to be tough for them to get Giannis going. And again, this is where I was talking about how players have to step up. On the Western Conference side, again, I don't think there's a team out there that's going to even challenge Golden State. I think Golden State could beat this Rockets team in 6, very least. And in the next round, if it's the Nuggets, we know what happens when the Warriors play the Nuggets. It seems like there's always a statement game. They'll win that series probably in 5. And then if the Blazers can pull it out, I think that's honestly a sweep because outside of Damian Lillard, there's nobody there really. I mean, Rodney Hood's had a couple of good games. CJ McCollum is finding his shot, but as far as the actual Warriors go, you're going to have Al-Farouq Aminu on Kevin Durant, who's had the series he's had. You're going to have Enes Kanter on probably Draymond, and Draymond doesn't even score. Draymond's the guy who's going to pass the ball around. You're going to have Dame, who's a pretty good offensive player, or pretty good defensive player on Steph Curry. And McCollum is on Clay. That's just such a bad matchup. I think the Warriors win that series at the most 5, if that happens. But Warriors, Raptors, that's my finals right now. Warriors, Raptors, collision course. We'll go on to our final thing, hot take of the week. So our final hot take of the week here on Radio Free Radford. It hurts me to say that, but what is your final hot take? And make sure it's good, because, again, this is the last chance.
Okay, I'm going to go one football, one basketball since it's the last one. Start off with basketball. Let's see. I think that Giannis scores 50 tonight. Humbles Al Horford, makes a statement, and cements what should be his case. I know they only look at regular season, but should cement his case as an MVP candidate, or the MVP of this past year. And when it comes to football, I'm going to go big. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury pair up to have a top 5 offense next year in Arizona, leading the Cardinals to 9 to 10 wins.
Interesting decisions there, and I'll kind of go off of what you said as well. My hot take of the week, first off, is for the NFL. I think that the best pick, not the best player, the best pick that's going to happen for, I think, the team that is going to, here's how I'm going to say this, because it's a hot take. I'm not 100% confident in this, I will say that. I'm just saying it for hot take purposes. Daniel Jones becomes the second best quarterback in this class. I know he was drafted second, but as far as what a lot of people are giving him credit for, they're calling him the 4th, 5th best quarterback in this draft, behind Dwayne Haskins, behind Drew Lock. My hot take, aside from Kyler Murray, he's the best quarterback in this draft. He gets the proper development that he needs from Eli Manning and the New York Giants, and he comes out. And again, I think he's pro-ready. I think he has a lot of different good traits that just need a little bit of developing. Again, I don't know if I agree with picking him number 6, but Daniel Jones, the second best quarterback in the class. And finally, here's another hot take I have. for the NBA, this isn't the hot take. The best player in the playoffs right now is Kevin Durant. The way he's playing, the way he's done his business in the past 3 games is really almost unparalleled in the NBA. My hot take for the second best player in the playoffs right now, Nikola Jokic. Let's talk about this. 2 triple-doubles in the first round, averaging about 24 points per game, close to 8 assists, double-digit rebounds. He's been the entire reason that Denver is where they are today and where they are right now. I'm not saying overall. I'm not saying that he will be the second best player coming into the league next season. But the way he's playing right now, dropping 37, 9, and 6 in the first game against Portland off of 1 day of rest, Nikola Jokic, second best player in the playoffs. And so that's going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford for good. As some of the listeners may know, I am going to be graduating from Radford University on May the 11th, and in turn will be leaving the town of Radford. It's been a wild ride, and I wouldn't trade the experiences that I had here from RFR, Student Media, or Radford University for anything. I want to say thank you to a few people. First, to Tristan Rhines, the general manager here at RFR. Tristan allowed us to come in and supported the show from the very beginning. He came in and gave a talk to one of my classes, and I was very interested. He met with me and was very willing to get us onto the show, and so we wouldn't be able to do this show or have nearly as many opportunities as we've had without his leadership of RFR. So again, thank you to Tristan. He will be graduating alongside me on the 11th. Next, I want to extend my thanks to my co-host Isaiah Adair for sticking with me and the 2 years that this show has ran. I appreciate the effort and the time that you took out of your day to come to talk sports for the listeners. I think we've been very successful with the show here on campus. And I hope that you can come back and potentially do another show in the fall semester, maybe with a friend of yours. You talked about that off the air a little bit. And finally, I'd like to extend an extra special thanks to you, the listeners, as everything that we do is meant to entertain those who listen to us. If you do really like what you hear in Radio Free Radford and you want to support the station, definitely do that and get a head start on next year's shows and follow those social media pages. Their Twitter's at Radio Free Ratty, Instagram and Facebook are Radio Free Radford. That's at Radio Free Ratty, Instagram and Facebook are Radio Free Radford. The hosts here at the station spend a ton of time on their show, and it means the world to them to have the support on their work. We are on YouTube, where all of our broadcasts are uploaded to. Find us at Hot Takes with Holmes to catch the broadcast of our fantastic 2-year history, including the one today, which will be uploaded either tonight or tomorrow. Isaiah, last comments you have before we go off the air for good here from RFR.
Man, not to get too sentimental, but I don't think the listeners know exactly like our full history. You realize it's been 7 years off and on that we've been like doing sports journalism stuff. Starting off freshman year of high school on the old newspaper. I don't think we wrote any together that year, but sophomore year we wrote a lot of joint articles, which look up RRHS Arrowhead and search both of our names on Google, and there's going to be some articles there from years ago. And then junior year, we only had a piece or two together because I didn't take our newspaper class. But then senior year, we have quite a few more. Then after that, we kind of broke our own way freshman year of college. We both wrote, Blake still writes on the Denver Nuggets fan-sided page. I wrote for the Arizona Cardinals fan-sided page, and I only did that for that year then, though. But when I came to Radford, we started working together again. So this is the end of the road for me from a journalism career standpoint. And it would have ended 2 years ago if it wasn't for Blake, 3 years ago if it wasn't for Blake, actually. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity. And, man, it's been a wild 7-year ride that I wouldn't trade for anything, honestly.
And again, as I said at the beginning of the show, the entire purpose of this show was to create a relatable feel, to make the listeners, and for those viewing the Facebook Live here, to make you feel as closely into the conversation as possible. We wanted to show, because again, I can't state this enough. For those of you that know Isaiah and me, and you know me specifically, this is all we do outside of the show. We talk about sports all the time, whether it be with someone who isn't familiar with sports or is familiar with sports. We're always willing and wanting to talk about sports. So to bring that onto a radio atmosphere and share that with other people was something that whenever I got the opportunity, I said, absolutely, let's do it. And so again, it's been ridiculous. It's been insane to think that 2 years has flown by that quickly. And it's definitely bittersweet that I will be leaving in close to 2 weeks now. But with that being said, signing off one last time. For my co-host Isaiah Adair, I'm Blake Holmes. Thank you for allowing us to spend so much time with you here on Radio Free Radford. Have a spectacular day.